Compact cars at V8 speed and Resto? Well, sure, it's one of these. So, believe it or not, this was considered a compact car back in 1967. If you recall, in the 50s, the big three automakers really didn't do much with smaller cars. The land yacht cars of the late 50s from Pontiac and Cadillac and Buick and Chevrolet were a lot bigger than this one. So what happened, right? Well, there's a little car called the Nash Rambler, which had been around all throughout the 50s and was kind of an annoyance to General Motors. It was produced by AMC, the American Motors Corporation, and throughout the 50s, this little car started selling more and more and more to the point where the big three took notice by the end of the decade. In fact, there was a song by a band called the Playmates called Beep Beep, which was about an annoying little Nash Rambler that chases down a Cadillac of all things. So what do they do about it? Well, Ford came out with the 1960 Ford Falcon, Chrysler came out with the Plymouth Valiant, and Chevrolet came out with the Chevrolet Corvair. Now the Corvair and the Valiant were both kind of weird looking, but they still sold pretty well. The Ford Falcon was the sales leader for the small cars in 1960, and it did really well at over 430,000 units. The Chevy Corvair was in second place at 230-some thousand, and that Plymouth Valiant came in at number 3 at just under 200,000. But the Nash Rambler did 450-some thousand. So these cars started coming on strong, and General Motors and Ford and Chrysler realized that there was definitely a market for smaller cars. This is a Chevy II, which came out in 1962, and there's a difference between a Chevy II and a Nova. This is technically a Nova. Well, the Chevy II was the baseline, the Nova was the high line, and by 1967, they evolved to what you see here, and you could get a V8 and disc brakes, bucket seats, and an SS package, and a really cool car for 67. Interestingly, the 67 Nova had the lowest sales of any Chevy II or Nova up until 1979, and that's partly because Chevrolet came out with another cool small car in 67 called the Camaro. One of the first things you notice when driving this car is just how basic it is. It's a bench seat, crank windows, manual steering and brakes. But having manual stuff sometimes is, it's also a lot of fun because it keeps you a little more connected to the car. And I'm not saying this feels like a road race car, but you definitely have that connection of a mechanical feel of when you're stepping on the brakes and when you're turning the wheel, that it's affecting things directly and not through a pump or through a booster or something else. So it feels good. This butternut yellow 67 is a really clean car. It's lived in California its whole life, and it's a V8 car with disc brakes, and it came to us after already having some modifications done to it, but it just needed some maintenance and a few other upgrades. So today it's got a 350 cubic inch full roller small block with aluminum heads, aluminum intake, and a FiTech fuel injection system hiding underneath that dual snorkel air cleaner, which still retains the 283 sticker on it. It's got a strut tower brace, it's got lowered front springs, like I said, disc brakes, and it's backed by a factory 4-speed. And everything on this car is manual steering, manual brakes, bench seat, but it's very basic, but still very fun to drive. It's got some high performance suspension pieces on it that not only make it sit lower, but make it hold the road and feel far more precise than an original Chevy II. And the engine makes great power. It's not a race car motor, but our friends at Fast Times did a really good job on rebuilding the long block and adding a set of AFR heads and a modern hydraulic roller camshaft, which is far safer than the flat tappet cam, especially with today's lubricants. Inside, our Nova is a good mix of basic with a few performance items. I love the original bench seats with the original upholstery, and it's even got some rips in it, which means this car gets used. But you do see that Hurst 4-speed handle coming through the floor there. But just a blower fan and an AM radio and manual steering, and that's about all you get. Take somebody for a ride in a car like this, and they'll be rushing to get one for themselves. But really the recipe is pretty simple. Fairly powerful engine, reliable fuel injection, a good clutch, a manual transmission, either a 4, 5, or 6-speed. In this case with a 4-speed and a decent gear so that you're not tacking out at 1,000,000 RPM going down the highway. It's not the quickest car in the world, but for something that you can really drive and use and enjoy, this thing does everything it's supposed to. One more little piece of trivia on a car like this. Do you know where the term compact car came from? It was coined by none other than George Romney, who was the president of the AMC Corporation that made those Nash Ramblers. Also went on to be governor of Michigan. Well, this compact car came to us for the engine work and some tuning and suspension. And if you have one of these, and you need some help with it, we're happy to give you a hand. This would be nice in there. You can reach us at v8speedshop.com, and we'll see you next time on What Are You In For?